bunch of articles going up on Infowars.com. I want to apologize to our next guest here, ladies and gentlemen, because I ended up pushing him back today, but obviously he understands in news that happens. Dan Dix, Press for Truth. I think it's .ca. This says .com, but great website, great investigative journalist, done a lot of investigative journalist work for us. And he's got the headline, What Happened in Ottawa, up on his site. We should post that article and that video. Dan, you're there in front of the Parliament where the shooting happened yesterday. You would have thought that Godzilla descended, destroying the city. I know one man died, and also the reported shooter died. We know that the Royal Mounted Police got caught a few years ago nearby attacking themselves, dressed up as anarchists. So they had to later admit that indeed that was a false flag. But this doesn't look like a false flag to me because it was so inept. He could only kill one person. He got killed by the sergeant-in-arms quickly. But who knows? Nowadays, stuff's so fake. You live up there, Dan Dix, so there's the Parliament right behind you. I see a lot of press there. What do you think happened?
Well, regardless of what happened, one thing I do know is that this is going to completely change the political landscape here in Canada, simply because of the way that people are reacting to this. Now, whether or not this was a false flag or if this was a organic kind of rogue lash out is still remains to be seen. But the bottom line is we do have to be careful as Canadians about how we respond to such a thing. I'm finding, I've interviewed a lot of people today, and the general consensus is that everybody seems to be okay with the increase in a police state around here, so long as it keeps people safe. So the media is already touting this as being an act of terrorism. There are newspapers all over the world saying terror has arrived here in Canada. Meanwhile, we don't even have all the facts in on this guy yet, but unfortunately, the damage is done with headlines like that. It conditions the minds of the masses and the Canadian people to believe that there is a terrorist threat, and meanwhile, we don't even know if this is true yet or not.
Expanding on that, sometimes they have drills where they get somebody and then claim they're a Muslim convert and set them up like 7/7. We know that was a false flag. That's even come out, and I've had retired intelligence officers from England on about it. So we know they do this. And the Royal Mounted Police got caught. We wrote an article about it yesterday. They were all wearing the same boots, attacking police as a pretext to then attack the anti-WTO people and others. So we know this stuff goes on, but it could be some crazy, person. But I agree with you. The response, give up your rights, you'll be safe. I mean, they were barricading stuff hours after he was dead. Just the panicking, the checkpoints, the guy strutting around behind you right now, kind of keeping an eye on you because you look so dangerous. I mean, how about they stop just letting all these people fly in unfettered? See, that's my issue. If you're going to have open immigration, do it. But then don't take everybody's rights acting like internally you can set up checkpoints randomly when the main borders are open. It's clearly a power grab. Look at our government funding ISIS. I wonder how the Syrians, like 300,000 people getting murdered the last 4 years by Western-backed jihadis that this guy, they claim, was connected to. I mean, what's going to happen when ISIS does come over here and blow up schools or attack police stations? I'm not giving my rights up, because they use Stinger missiles to blow planes out of the sky that our government gave them, Dan.
Well, I'll tell you, Alex, they've been conditioning us to be afraid and to accept these draconian measures. I put together a video called Conditioning Canadians on the War on Terror. And if people want to see that, it's available at pressfortruth.ca. And in it, we extensively document over the last 6 or 7 years all the various amounts of conditioning and setups that CSIS, the Canadian Security and Intelligence Service, and the CMP have been involved in, when sometimes it may just be coercing an informant, kind of setting these guys up and incubating them and allowing some sort of attack to happen once they have become radicalized through the intelligence communities. So we documented that extensively, and how over the last 6 years, there's been heavy conditioning here in Canada to basically, as soon as something happens here, the first thing everybody thinks is terrorists. It must be terrorists. And they've been setting this up for quite some time now, trying to link these guys with the Islamic State, ISIS. As you may know, Stephen Harper recently sent a whole fleet of F-18 fighter jets.
That's right, and ISIS said they would then attack Canada. Remember that?
Yeah, exactly. So now, as you said, is this a case of retaliation? Is this a rogue nut? Is this an all-out false flag, which it very well could be as well? Remains to be seen. But again, we simply just can't rush into bombing other countries and removing all the rights of the Canadian people here because of this tragic incident. So
well, I mean, in the old days, there's a couple people got shot. They'd find out who was responsible and bring them to justice. Everybody wouldn't roll around in total fear. They used to send one Texas Ranger to take on like 100 people, and they'd say, why they only send one? Well, that's because all we need to get into this mode of just guys with machine guns everywhere running around hysterical like a beehive when only 2 people got killed. It just looks like total drama queen behavior and looks pretty cowardly to me. And again, I'm just saying, compared to the way people used to act anywhere, this is not how you project strength, is the barricading, the freaking out, the hyperventilating. It looked like the Ayatollah Khomeini walked by earlier. Who were those folks? Did you see those guys look like Iranians?
Yeah, a number of people are still here. If you want, I can walk you through here and give you a bit of a look at what the scene really is like here. I mean, there is a lot of media around right now doing interviews. This is pretty much the front of the gate. This is the memorial that is just being set up for the fallen soldiers. So people have been coming here all day today, paying their respects, and a lot of media, a lot of other kind of groups here. Yeah, those guys, though, I'm not sure. They just walked up, but as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to try to interview some of those guys. So,
well, it is a tragedy for the soldier. He's just sitting there on honor guard. Somebody walks up and shoots him repeatedly. And I've just seen a lot of witnesses that say they saw it who look pretty credible. It could be a false flag, or like you said, he could be, it's that FBI tactic. Even the New York Times reported on, out of 100 bombing plots in the U.S., turned out 97, I think, were, hatched by the FBI, if you read the report. This is a very dangerous precedent. And so I just don't think we can trust what we're being told.
Well, Alex, it's come out that the soldier was armed with the gun, but it turns out the gun is not loaded, and they never are. And of course, this is going to bring up. Of course it is. What's the point of having a soldier on guard if he is not armed? And of course, we don't know yet what kind of a weapon or all we know is this was a long gun that was used.
Yeah, there is no way. It looks like a 243 or a 30-30 or something. But continuing here, imagine being on guard duty at a parliament and you don't have a loaded gun. I mean, it's a major target.
Yeah,
this is just ridiculous. And I mean, why government has all this police state and they can't protect the parliament? I mean, that is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's just it. I mean, apparently this guy walks up to the soldier and he shoots him. He then manages to make his way a great deal. I can show you. Here is the monument, and Parliament building is all the way over there. And
it's like 300 yards. I've been there. It's about 300 yards.
Yeah. I mean, it is. Yeah. And he managed to go from there into the Parliament building, where there are security checks to get by. There are metal detectors. There are security guards you got to get by. Yeah, so he managed to get through.
Why was it the sergeant of arms that shot him? I mean, that the sergeant in arms out of probably 100 security people would be the person to shoot him. I mean, maybe the security isn't allowed to have guns? Dan Dix of pressfortruth.ca or .tv is our guest. A lot of his films are on his site. I'm going to go into some overdrive and talk to Frank, who's in California, a physician, Jeff, a firefighter, and an envirotech specialist. Appreciate you guys holding. But in a few minutes we've got left, Dan, I want to invite you on the Nightly News there, if they can tape some of that with you for later tonight so you can expand on the amazing reporting you're doing. But in the few minutes we've got left, other points you'd like to make from the scene of the battle for Ottawa, as it's being called, greater than the Nazi blitz on London. Everyone rolling around on the ground in fear, begging for Big Brother to watch everything they do to keep them safe from ISIS that the Canadian government's been part of arming.
Well, Alex, I would just beg people not to fear their governments, not to fear this Islamic State, and to realize that this is indeed about getting us into going along with some of these plans that they have for Canadians. So I just want to encourage Canadians to remember that we just can't simply just jump all over this and listen to what the mainstream media is reporting, because they're doing a very shoddy job, I must say. So that's why we just decided to come down here and get on the grounds and try to get to the bottom of what's going on. If this does indeed turn out to be a false flag, if we find out this guy was on SSRI drugs or or he was involved in the military. All these things will come out. But remember, they're already calling it terrorism. Do not be afraid of terrorism here in Canada. And if it does, always remember, folks, that suspect number one is definitely the state.
Because that's who stands to gain in the power grab and who's been caught doing it over and over again. And I love how they were aiming guns at reporters yesterday and saying, don't report. And there's a security guard or cop keeps walking around giving you the eye. I mean, because you're just so suspicious, Dan.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're sometimes perhaps considered the enemy in these types of environments. So I'll have to be careful out here, Alex.
Now, is the Parliament is a beautiful neo-Gothic construction built, I guess, about 100 years ago. I spent hours looking at it when I was there a few years ago. Dan, we got to have you back on the Nightly News.